Welcome to the Explainer, brought to you by Forge College. Today, we're making that highly anticipated and, let's be honest, sometimes a little painful jump from the EVM over to the SVM. Listen, if Ethereum is kind of the Wild West, the Solana runtime is a strict, heavily guarded fortress. We're picking up right where we left off in our previous lesson, core principles of Solana accounts. By now, you know what Solana accounts look like under the hood, so today we're actually going to look at how they behave out in the wild. Here is our game plan for today. We'll cover the runtime bouncer, persistent versus invocation data, owners versus signers, cross-program invocations, the magic of PDAs, and finally, a 6-step execution checklist. Let's jump in. All right, starting us off, Section 1, the runtime bouncer. In Ethereum, the EVM smart contract is kind of like a friendly bartender. You walk up, ask for a drink, and the bartender just happily manages the tab behind the bar. But in Solana, the runtime is a completely different vibe. It's like a massive, unforgiving festival bouncer who absolutely does not care who you know. Before your instruction gets anywhere near the VIP lounge of actual program execution, this bouncer rigorously checks two things: what you permanently own and what temporary permissions you brought with you today. If you don't have both, no way, you aren't getting in. Every single time you interact with a program on Solana, you actually have to hand this bouncer an ordered list. We call this an account meta. Think of it as your guest list application. It details who you are, meaning your pub key and owner, and what you intend to do using two very specific Boolean flags, is signer and is writable. Now, these flags don't live on the account itself. You have to explicitly bring them to the door every single time you invoke an instruction. That actually brings us right into Section 2, persistent versus invocation data. Or, as I like to think of it, IDs versus wristbands. You really need to separate these two concepts in your head. First, you have persistent properties. That's your data bytes, your lamports, your owner field. Those live on the account permanently. That's your physical laminated ID card. Then you have per instruction flags, is signer and is writable. Those only exist as a temporary assertion during that specific transaction. That is the neon paper wristband you put on just for the night. Let's break down exactly what lives where. The owner field and the executable bit, those are stored persistently. The bouncer checks these to make sure only true program accounts are invoked and that all ownership rules are being followed. But is signer and is writable? Those are absolutely not stored persistently. They are temporary wristbands that the runtime enforces immediately at invocation. If you try to write data to an account that doesn't currently have the is writable wristband on, well, the runtime will trap your instruction and throw you out on the street immediately. Moving right along, Section 3, owners versus signers. Trust me, this is the big EVM mix-up. A lot of EVM developers coming over from Ethereum's MSG.sender constantly mix these two concepts up, totally blurring the lines of authority. So let's draw a hard line right now. A signer is simply the person or entity whose private key validated the transaction. That's it. Being a signer just proves intent. It basically means you authorized an action to happen, like saying, yep, I approve transferring my tokens into this vault. You just signed the permission slip. An owner, on the flip side, is the program that actually controls the data layout. The owner is permanently assigned in the account's persistent owner field. Only the owner can execute privileged operations against the account's actual bytes, like changing its data or altering its internal state. So the absolutely crucial difference here is proving intent versus mutating data. Think back to our festival analogy for a second. Look, I don't care if you sign the transaction to enter the club. Congratulations, you proved your intent to be there. But if you don't actually own the club, you can't just start changing the furniture. Signers ask for things to happen. Owners are the programs that actually have the authority to mutate the physical data to make it happen. Treat them as complementary, but definitely not interchangeable. Okay, Section 4, cross-program invocations, or passing the baton. What happens when your program needs to call another program? Say, a vault program needing to physically move tokens by calling the SPL token program. We call this a cross-program invocation, or CPI. It's basically a fresh instruction sent from one program to another. But here's the catch. The bouncer at the second door has zero memory of your wristbands from the first door. They do not care that you were just inside. When you do a CPI, you must explicitly forward the is-signer and is-writable flags again in a newly assembled list of account metas. If you forget to pass that signer flag along, the token program will flat out reject your request. And because that other program you just called might have gone and modified account data or lamports globally across the network, you've got to be extremely defensive. Trust but verify. Checkpoint your invariants like total token balances and abort immediately if anything looks out of place once that call returns. Which brings us to Section 5, the magic of PDAs, or as they're colloquially known, VIPs without IDs. Now, you might be wondering, what if a program needs to act as an authority and sign for something, like transferring lamports out of a permit vault, but programs by definition don't even have private keys? Well, that's exactly what a program-derived address, or PDA, is for. Back to our club analogy. A PDA is a VIP who forgot their ID, so the program manager just comes out to the bouncer and vouches for them. It's an authority that relies entirely on a mathematical proof and bump seeds provided by the program, completely replacing the need for a private key. To pull this off, you use the invoke_signed API. By calling this specific API during a cross-program invocation, the runtime bouncer verifies the program's seeds. And if the math checks out, the runtime magically allows the PDA to be treated as a legitimate signer for that specific invoked instruction. It's a really brilliant way to let smart contracts autonomously manage assets without needing human intervention to sign a transaction. Finally, Section 6. The execution checklist. Let's make sure you don't get tossed out. You really need a strict architectural checklist before you assemble any transaction. Let's walk through it. Step 1. Collect your transaction signatures from the users. Step 2. The runtime does its pre-execution checks. It verifies those signatures, checks rent constraints, and ensures the executable bits are set. Step 3. Your program actually hits its entry point. It reads the accounts, and it must treat any account not explicitly marked is_writable as strictly read-only. Otherwise, boom, the runtime traps it. Step 4. You perform your authority-guarded operations, defensively checking that the correct signers and owners are actually present. Step 5. If you need to call another program, you assemble a CPI, explicitly forwarding your account metas and using invoke-signed for any PDAs. And wrapping it up, Step 6. Post-CPI verification. Always check your invariants to ensure absolute state consistency before you finalize that transaction. All right, that brings us to our conclusion and next steps. We've covered a massive amount of architectural ground today, so let's quickly recap. First, always separate persistent storage, your IDs, from your temporary invocation wristbands like is_signer and is_writable. Second, remember the golden rule. Signers prove intent while owners actually mutate data. Third, cross-program invocations require explicit flag forwarding. That bouncer at the next door knows absolutely nothing about you. And fourth, never skip your 6-step execution checklist. I want to leave you with a provocative question to ask yourself every single time you sit down to build a Solana instruction. Who signs, who writes, who owns, and which CPIs need signed PDAs? Keep that front of mind as you head into our next lesson, data allocation and persistent accounts, where we're going to apply all of this to design some truly durable account layouts. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Remember to visit forge.college to dive deeper into this subject and continue mastering advanced Web3 architecture. Until next time, keep your wristbands visible, and I'll see you in the next one.